about use cases, and I have a quick agenda which I have put forth here. I think today my connection is bad, and even my system seems to be, not helping. Looks like it's hanging for some reason. I'm not able to bring up the presentation in the presentation mode. I'm extremely sorry. Apologize for this inconvenience. I'll just keep talking. I think it's going to come up in a minute. So my agenda was this. I want to, first start with the disadvantages that we have in capturing FSD in a plain text format. We always take, a requirement, capture a requirements in a plain text format, be it a Word, be it an Excel. We usually do it in a plain text format. So I wanted to bring up a real case, a real example, and then see how we typically write functional specification document for a real business requirement, and share the limitations which we have found in using the plain text format. Then I wanted to tell you, what are use cases all about? What are different components of use cases? Say actors, preconditions, basic alternate flows, and different, different artifacts embedded within the use case document. Then I wanted to cover, show you a sample use case along with allied components which make a use case granular in nature. So I have a detailed sample which I'm going to show to you. And I want to touch upon the advantages and disadvantages of use case. So this is the whole agenda for this session today. So I hope that you would take away little knowledge on what are use cases, how a typical use case looks like, what components can make a use case more granular. These are different things that you would take away from this session. And you will also want to touch upon where a use case might not be a good fit. Right? What sort of requirements use case will not be a good fit. I will also touch upon that point. So let's get on to the session. But before that, I also wanted to tell you what we shall not be looking at in this session. Number one is, how to write a best use case. We will not get on to nitty-gritties of writing a best use case. Right? First, I wanted to give you knowledge on what is a use case and what are different components in a use case. So we will not be getting on to details of how to write a best use case. We will not be getting into details of how to identify different scenarios in a use case. So these are different things which I think we should deal with in a detailed session, like identifying how to identify business rules. These are things which we should look into next level. The last thing which I want to tell everyone is we will not be validating the correctness of the functional requirements captured in the sample use case. Let's just use the sample to understand how a use case looks and how we can make it more granular by adding more components to it. So I want to set this expectation. I'm taking a sample business requirement. This I wanted to get on to details of how we capture functional requirements for this business requirement. Right? So this requirement is about allowing cash withdrawal through ATM. So this is a very common requirement which every one of us can relate to. So this is my business requirement today. and it has few more, validations attached to it. A customer can withdraw only up to available balance in the account, which is quite obvious rule. The other one is a customer can only withdraw a maximum of 15,000 in a day. These are the three high-level requirements that I got from business. First business requirement, if we go about writing the functional specification in a plain text format, I think we generally go about this way. Right? I just thought about it, and this is how we typically write. The system must allow customers to withdraw cash from his account through ATM. So we articulate the requirement. Of course, it's subjective. Each individual could have a different way of writing it. Keep here. Somebody is raising a hand. Let me see what the. If I'm audible, okay. No one is saying I'm audible. Okay, thanks for that. So typically, this is how we capture the requirements in a plain text format. We go about writing in a vertical way. Say, the daily allowed limit for the withdrawal for customer will be 15,000. Then we go about writing the system must allow customer to withdraw cash only up to the available balance in the account. So if we write it in this way, we would face that few issues. This doesn't mandate a BA to capture all possible details of the functional requirement. That is subjective in nature, depends on the BA's experience, BA's thought process. That makes this document granular, or it leaves it at a high level. So this plain text way of writing requirements, the template itself doesn't mandate the BA to capture granular information. Also, it doesn't mandate us to capture end-to-end workflow. We typically capture the requirement per se, whatever may be. Say it could be a small change to an existing system. In that case, we happen to capture the change aspect alone. If it's going to be a completely new development, then again we tend to capture the requirement by allow us to capture the end-to-end flow. I mean, the template per se will not provoke us to think in end-to-end flow. So it depends on the individual. If the experienced BA we want to capture the end-to-end flow, we always do that. But the template doesn't mandate that, right? And then it could lead to ambiguous requirements. Let's take this example where we are saying maximum of 15,000 in a day can be withdrawn. The way in which one can capture the requirement makes that requirement ambiguous. We may not tend to say is it one-time withdrawal or multiple withdrawals amounting to 15,000. That can come out in the functional specification captured in the plain text format. So it again depends on this gap that we have with the plain text way of capturing the template and the use cases. So I wanted to give this background before even we get on to see the actual use case. I'm trying to keep the mic closer now. Is it better? It's better. Let me continue. If it's still not good, let me hear someone else here. This is background on the limitations that we have with the FSD in plain text format. Let's try to know what a use case is. We define a use case as a sequence of steps describing the interaction between one or more actors and the system. It's something like, two actors are having conversation, or two users are having conversation, or a user is having a conversation with the system. When we say conversation, it's the interaction that a user has with the system by means of invoking a screen or giving some inputs to the existing screen. That's all. So it's typically a sequence of steps between actors to achieve a goal that yields the result of value to one or more stakeholders. This is how we typically define a use case. Right? So it's nothing but a conversation between a user and the system to achieve a goal which is going to be of benefit to one or more stakeholders. In our case, where the customer is going to withdraw cash through an ATM machine, the user is the customer, the bank's customer. The other actor of the system involved is the ATM machine. Sorry, not audible. Voice and screen refresh both are very bad. Can't understand anything. I'm really sorry. I have a bad signal. Still, if it is not audible, I think let me try keep the mic closer to me. Is it better now? I hope my voice is audible. I'm really sorry about the voice being broken and my screen not visible. Okay. I'll try that. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the definition of use cases. And in a typical use case, what are the things that are involved? One is the actors. Actor could be primary or secondary. You'll see who is the primary and secondary when we see the sample. Other than this, there are sections like precondition, post-condition. I'd like to show off the samples and then explain you what are these. So I'll pick up the sample use case that I have, which I have put forth for this example of withdrawing the cash through ATM. Okay. So I'm trying to open that. In a minute, you might find a lag here. So the document, I have to come out of the presentation and then invoke it. Might find a lag in my screen, in my screen. Please bear with me. Opening the case Word document. Here you are going to see various components of a use case. Each of us would have, some of us would have seen use cases. Some of us would have just written use cases in a Word document as a sequence of steps. So I happen to have a training session by IIBA, where IIBA course, where they had recommended adding few artifacts to the use case that makes the use case granular. I have put forth everything in the sample. I hope you are able to see the Word document on my screen now. So this is a typical use case which starts with a quick description of what this use case is all about. Right? Now one or two liners. So this use case describes the process when an ATM user withdraws cash through the ATM. Here we see more than one actor being involved. One is the ATM user who is the customer. We call this as a primary actor because he is the one who is invoking this transaction or the use case. Right? He is directly involved in this use case. He is called the primary actor. He is responsible for triggering it, or he could be, or he or the system could be responsible for doing that. We call that as a primary. Right? So, secondary actor, I have listed it as customer information system, core banking system. These, I call this a secondary actor. Right? I'll tell you why by showing you the use case model. Just going down, I'm pulling my screen down in the Word document to open the use case model. I hope I'm still audible. Okay. So I'm going to invoke the use case model to show you the relationship between various actors. Right? This will help you understand what a primary actor is and what a secondary actor is. Invoking this Word document, which is the use case model. So this is coming up. Sure. I'll keep sharing that. Yeah, here comes the use case model. Right? Let me slightly zoom it up. And it's going to be visible. So it's having a little lag. Let me keep explaining what is this. Yeah. So you could find diagrams here. We call this an individual as a stick diagram. So this person on the left side of the ATM system at the center is the primary actor, right? The ATM user. He's the one who invokes this transaction or use case. He is the primary actor. He interacts with ATM system to achieve a goal. The goal is to withdraw the cash through ATM. ATM system is again part of our primary actors group. Okay? So, to achieve this goal of withdrawing cash through ATM, this ATM system in turn can interact with various actors. In this case, the system needs to interact with customer information system to pull out customer label information for certain validation, or to pull out the accounts attached to a customer. So, to achieve this goal, ATM system is interacting with subsystems, right? Other systems. One is the customer information system, other one is the core banking system. Core banking system, here it's used in context of knowing the balance, while the ATM machine allows to withdraw the cash. So these supporting actors or supporting systems help achieving a goal in the use case are called as secondary systems, secondary actors. The primary is the ATM user in our example, the secondary are the customer information system and the core banking system. And we are capturing the goal at the center in the oval box here which says withdraw cash through ATM. The boundary here is the ATM system. This ATM system can have multiple goals or multiple use cases, right? So withdrawing cash is one use case. The other use cases could be printing a mini statement, right? Doing a funds transfer request, or changing your PIN, So when you build the ATM system, you can envisage all use case or goals of the ATM machine or the system, capture each of them or group them logically into one goal, and then capture it here within the box. So that's going to be your use case goal. Right? So I hope you understand the difference between the primary and secondary actors here, in context to the use case. So in a use case diagram and a use case model, we capture this high-level diagram which defines the scope of the system that we are developing, high-level scope of the system. And we also generally capture description of each of the actors involved here. Right? Who's an ATM user, the primary or secondary. Right? So we give quick description for each of the actors involved here. You could see the third column here which says modified by project. Let me take a minute here to explain why we have such a column. These columns are typically living documents. I'm hearing a question here, I think. Not a big question. Okay, let's take this question at the end of the session. I will read it at the end of the session. Let me keep continuing with the session here. If you have questions, you can feel free to drop there in the notes. I will pick them up at the end of the session. So modified by project is kept here for a reason. Right? So these documents are living documents in the sense it's not just for one project. We document this and we keep using this for any changes that come up in the given use case. So these are living documents. So every project that modifies this use case model or use case, you just keep track of project reference and also the quick descriptions. In this way, it's going to help anyone who is going to look at the use case document to know which project modifies what functionality in a use case. You want to be good, practices in capturing this. So this is how we typically capture a use case model. I hope it has given you insights into primary and secondary actors. So because we can go back to our use case document. I'm just switching to our use case document here. Taking a little time to respond back. So, in the meantime, let me tell you, before attempting to write details of a use case, generally we capture the use case model. That gives us the scope of our use case and the system actors involved in the use case. That's about use case model and primary and secondary actors. Let's go back to our definition of primary and secondary. And then we can continue with our list. Precondition. Every use case would have a precondition by itself. In saying that, I should also say some of the use cases not necessarily should have a precondition, but generally we attempt to explore if there is any precondition required to achieve the functionality of a use case. Right? So in this case, to withdraw cash to an ATM, user or the customer should have been authenticated by the ATM. This is a precondition for this use case to work. If this precondition has failed, then the use case cannot progress further. So we have to identify if there are any preconditions before we attempt going about writing the use case. Preconditions, after writing preconditions, then comes the section of basic flow of events. Use case typically has basic flow and the alternate flow. Let's see how they are different. So, use case typically, any use case typically starts with this kind of sentence. The use case starts when the user chooses to withdraw cash through ATM. So, the first step should talk about the trigger, right? So then we should go about, the communication between the system and the user. So, the trigger here is user chooses to withdraw cash through the ATM, and then the system responds back. As I said before, this is the communication between the user and the system. Right? The second step here, says system interfaces with customer information system to identify list of valid account types available for the customer. So when user requests to withdraw cash to ATM machine, system in turn responds by doing some activity. Here the response is it reaches out to a secondary system, secondary actor, to fetch the list of valid account types for the given customer. Here you could see on the right side, we have put for something like DS001. This is data set 001, whose name is customer information. Within brackets we say input. Right? So these sort of components is what is going to make the use case granular in nature. So let me show you what a data set is. Typically, it's the data elements involved in a given step. Right? Collate, group different data elements involved in a step and call that as a data set. Right? Here, the system, the ATM system, interfaces with customer information system to get a list of valid account types. So it has to give certain information to customer information system as an input to get back to valid account types. The output here is going to be DS002, that's data set 2, which we call as data valid account type information. We capture the details of this data set in a separate catalog, what we usually call as data catalog. So let me take 5 minutes to show you the data catalog and the information we usually capture in the data catalog. Attach the data catalog at the end of this document. This is data requirements catalog, data elements for this particular use case. Invoking the Excel sheet. As it opens, let me tell you quick information about how we typically capture the data catalog. So the data catalog is very comprehensive in nature for the entire system. Here in the context of our example is the ATM machine. So our data catalog should cover all the data elements involved in this ATM system. Right? It's going to be a comprehensive list of data elements. So whenever we attempt writing the use cases, we go about capturing the data elements in the data catalog. This data catalog is quite elaborate in nature, which captures the name of the data element, reference to it, the type of data element, say it's a text, number, alphanumeric, right? And then various validations attached to the data element, right? So the number of digits of the data element can only be 8 digits or 10 digits, right? So the validations need to be captured in the data catalog. So along with this, we also capture a lot of other information like whether a given data element is a mandatory data element or not, or whether it should appear on the screen or not. So all this information usually exists in the data catalog. So it is quite elaborate exercise writing a use case. But believe me, it's quite useful when we document this at this granular level, because it's going to help us in avoiding any ambiguity. It's going to be crystal clear in terms of what element is involved in which step. And for each element, you would define what is the rule attached to it, data rule attached to it, in terms of validation, in terms of data type. Right? So we capture to that granular level. Helps to avoid ambiguity, and it's also understandable by all stakeholders, be it business, be it our development team, be it the testing community, right, the QA community. Everybody would be able to relate to this because it won't be in system terms per se. I'm having an issue opening the Excel sheet, but it is getting open. But otherwise, these are the various details that we capture in a data catalog. So we go about listing data elements one by one in an Excel sheet. Sorry about facing some errors. Just opening up. So we list all the data elements in the Excel sheet, and we try to identify what all elements can be grouped together for a given data set. Right? We capture the data set information in the group, in the Excel. So I'll show you how we usually do it. This is coming up. Meanwhile, let me tell you the other components that you see here: the business rules catalog, the messages catalog. All these catalogs are going to make our use case granular in nature. Business rules are nothing but the rules we have captured, the business rules and how it's being interlinked in. Messages catalog, nothing but the list of messages that happen to occur while achieving the given goal. In our case, is withdrawal of cash. Right? As customer attempts to withdraw cash, he might face a lot of errors. Right? It could be an error like ATM machine is out of cash, or it could be an error where his balance is having insufficient balance. Right? It could be various scenarios where a customer could face an error. So we capture all those in the data in the messages catalog, and we contextually link it to the use case step. Right? So when we write use case, we give references to each of the data catalog, business rules, messages catalog. So thank God the catalog is up, the data catalog is up. Let me enlarge this. So if you can see this, the first column is the data element reference. We call it as D001, right? And then comes the data element name, a quick description, customer identification number. What is it? It's an 8-digit number used to identify a client. Right? We capture valid values of this data element. It should be an 8-digit number, must exist in the database. And then we also capture the default values If at all there is any default value, we capture that here. Then comes multiple a column to capture whether this particular field can hold multiple values. For example, this account type, D003, this data element can have multiple values. It basically refers to type of account, right? The type of account could be savings account, current account. So this field can hold more than one value. So that's what we say when we call multiple yes, no, or conditions. When we say condition, in a specific condition, if a condition is met, in that situation, it could be multiple. So the next column, if you see, it says mandatory yes, no condition. So as it's obvious to say whether the given field is mandatory or not. And then next column says user modifier or not. In this way, we make the data catalog very granular in nature. To capture all characteristics of a given data element, right? Whether it should be displayed on UI or not, what is the mapping rule or calculation rule involved for a given data element, right? What is the source for a data element? A lot of this information are captured, and then from column O, if you see, we are capturing the name of the data set. In our case, the data set name was DS001 customer information. That's the input that ATM machine gives it to the customer identification system. So what is it being passed on? The ATM machine passes the customer identification number and the ATM card number. So we put cross against these data elements under this data set. So when you filter this data set with X marks, you're going to see the list of data elements of a given data set. Any stakeholder would be able to know what is being sent or received in a given step and what are the characteristics of those data elements. With me, blank machine is really bad today. So these are the various components of the data catalog which makes the use case granular. So we saw how to identify different data elements in the data catalog, right? And then we tie back the data elements in a given step in the use case. So let us go back to the basic flow in the use case with this background. So moving up in the Word document, capture the use case description. Hope you are able to see my screen. It's a lot of time to respond back. Yeah. So just check the input here is customer information and the output is valid account type. Right? Then system presents the list of valid account types available for the user. It prompts the user to select one. This is quite interactive in nature, the use case. It describes the action and reaction between two actors. Right? It captures the data elements involved in every step if appropriate, right? If at all there is a data element involved in a step. Right? So that's how it goes on. I know I wouldn't want to go to every step here. Rather, I would want to move on to the step where there is a business rule involved, so that we can cover all aspects of use case. It's quite, detailed in nature. So, step 7, where the system successfully validates the withdrawal amount against the ATM available cash. Right? let's take a step, behind here. In step 6, user inputs the cash withdrawal information. So system responds back by validating the withdrawal amount against the ATM cash. Okay. How is the system going to validate it? That's what we define in our business rule. So the business rule here is determine whether the ATM has sufficient balance to process the withdrawal request. This is rule number 1. The system should first ensure the ATM is having sufficient cash. So if there is a sufficient cash, then move on to the next step. If there is no sufficient cash in the ATM machine, the system should prompt the user with appropriate message and about the transaction. Right? It should say, sorry, there is no sufficient funds available. So something of that sort, right? So that's what we capture in alternate flow A001, which is ATM out of cash. We name an alternate flow. Right? Identifier is A001 and then comes the name. We capture alternate flow underneath the basic flow, right? After the basic flow. So you see here, alternate flow, ATM out of cash, the A001. This says the flow starts at step 7 of the basic flow when the system determines that the available fund in the ATM is less than the amount requested by the user. So the alternate flow says where it starts, what is the trigger, and then it says how to handle them. It's going to show up some message to the user, or it's going to write some information into a file. Can be different scenarios, right? Depends on the scenario. Right? So in this case, the system is going to return appropriate message informing the user about unavailability of sufficient funds for withdrawal. So this message is what we call, what we identify as MS001. We capture the details of the message in the messages catalog. Right? So after showing the message, what should the system do? It should go back to the basic flow to step number 16. Right? Let's see what is step number 16. This is the end. So the transaction here is coming to an end because there is no sufficient fund. I hope you are able to relate to what a basic flow is and what the alternate flow is. Right? So whenever there is a deviation in the basic flow, as determined by a business rule, the system should take an alternate flow and then continue with that. So we happen to capture all information related to alternate flow, and of course the rule required to determine if it is the basic flow or alternate flow. The rules that we capture in the business rules catalog should be quite clear. To make it clear, we have to use the data elements references. So we have to use the data elements references to make it more clear without any ambiguity. So here comes our rule BR001, which is determine whether the ATM has sufficient balance to process the withdrawal request. Right? So this is how we typically write a rule, by referring to the data elements that we saw in the data catalog. So if D001 ATM available balance is greater than D007 withdrawal amount, then ATM has sufficient balance to process the withdrawal request. So we can use the data element references in the business rules so that all stakeholders understand what element to be used in the context of the given business rule. Otherwise, if you write it in a plain text, it might give a way for developer to design the field that needs to be referred in the given business rule. So this way, we can avoid ambiguity. Here you could see a lot of business rules that are required to achieve this goal of withdrawing cash. I'm not going into details of every rule. We are already 5 o'clock now. Let me try to give you a flavor of other sections in this document, so that at least you get to know what are different components of the use case. Okay. So that's about business rules. And you also saw the reference to message MS001. So let me quickly show you how we capture the message in the messages catalog. Okay. Here comes the messages catalog. MS001, the type of the message, whether it's error, warning, right, or an override message. We can identify the message type here, right, in this column, and then give a quick description of the message, context to the message. Right? This message shall be shown when the ATM is out of cash. Right? Give a quick context to the message, so as stakeholders, when they refer to this message, they would know what this message is for. Right? Then comes the actual message text, ATM out of cash. We can have messages in different languages. You can keep capturing that here. So we refer to these messages using the ID and the name. Right? So this is captured in the use case at appropriate steps wherever it's required. So this way, I hope you would agree when I say we make the use case very granular in nature. Right? There is very less possibility for anyone to miss a requirement. When you attempt documenting requirements in use case format, then you tend to capture details in every step. When you keep writing the requirements step by step, and you think what data element is required here in the step, if at all is required, what rule is required, right? It helps you to cover, right, granular details of a use case or a requirement. And also, it gives this end-to-end picture of the functionality involved. Every time you don't get to write end-to-end use case for a given requirement, but we have to invest documenting the use cases for one time. So eventually, for every other change for a given use case can be done quite quickly, without any ambiguity or without any issues. Right? It's going to be quick in the eventual changes that are going to come. Right? So the company has to invest in documenting the use cases, and then we can keep using it as a living document. I'm just quickly going through different sections here to just ensure if there is anything else that we should cover. Yeah, post condition. So at the end of use case, what is going to be the state of the system? The ATM cash balance would have been reduced by the amount withdrawn through the present transaction. Right? The balance would have come down, customer account balance would have come down, right? Customer would have got the cash. These are the final four conditions that we can document for this use case. So for every use case, we should think through to identify what should be the condition of the system at the end of use case or end of the goal to ensure whether the goal is achieved or not. Okay? So this is how a typical use case document looks like. Right? So with this, I'm going to close this document and move on to the use case presentation. Just to quickly wrap it up, I guess we are already overshoot our time by 10 minutes. Sorry for starting it late. I'm just bringing up the use cases PPT. I'll take 5 minutes, quickly wrap it up if everyone is okay with that. Just going back to the PPT. We have covered most of this. Why use cases are. I have covered it as I was going through, going through the use case document. I attempted explaining the advantages of use cases as we were going through the use case, the actual use case. So I think we should directly push on to the disadvantages of, using the use case. I hope, the points that someone has raised would be addressed now. Raghunathan has raised a point. So I think it would come up as a disadvantage, as one of the disadvantages of using a case, I believe. But let's quickly check that before we look at what Raghunathan has asked. Sorry, it's taking a little time to come up, but let me tell you what are the disadvantages of using the use case. Use cases without the allied components that we saw, say the data catalog, business rules, right, messages catalog. Without this, use cases are again with high-level requirements. They don't make the requirements granular. So these aligned artifacts make them granular in nature, right? But not all companies or not all of us practice capturing this granular information. In that way, it's a disadvantage if you see the use case as such as a standalone component, document, right? It has to be supplemented with all the granular components, right? So that's one disadvantage if you simply have the use case document alone. Typically, use cases are best fit when there is involvement between two actors, right? In the sense, like if it is a batch requirement, it may not be a good fit, right? If the requirement is something to build a new batch, then it may not be a good fit. So we can attempt writing use case for a batch processing requirement. It may not be ideal fit. Right? And the other disadvantages is with all the allied components, it's going to take a lot of time to capture the use case for the first time. But we have to see it as an investment, right? Once we do it, we're going to reap benefits for every change that we're going to do for the given use case. But it could also be seen as a disadvantage because, companies would not be ready to invest time owing to the project deadlines or owing to the cost or different reasons. They wouldn't be interested to invest unless they really have objective of documenting the use case. That way, it's a disadvantage. Right? The other thing is with all allied components, it becomes a little difficult for stakeholders to comprehend the requirements. But believe me, once the stakeholders are used to this format of capturing requirements, it's going to be very easy for them to know where to look for what. But till then, it's going to be difficult. Right? So we need to educate the stakeholders about various components involved in the use case so that they would know what to look for where and how it's helping them to capture the requirements in a granular way. So this is all I have for today. I would want to, see if you have any questions. First, let us take Raghunathan's question. Meanwhile, if any of you have any questions, please feel free to type there. I can take that up. Thank you so much for bearing with a lot of hiccups I had today. I apologize again for the inconvenience they have caused. So I'm just seeing the question by Raghunathan. I'd like your opinion on sorry, there comes a quick question. Let me quickly pick that up. What are allied components? Allied components are the ones that we saw as data catalog, business rule catalog, messages catalog. Those are allied components of an use case. Right? The use case as such is the primary document. But typically we don't happen to write all this happen to write all these allied components. So that's what I refer as allied components. Let me go back to, welcome Rajesh. We go back to read Raghunathan's question. Would like your opinion on, in quick delivery cycles that we follow nowadays in Agile Scrum, I see many organizations adopting plain text-based requirements which are detailed out verbally in face-to-face. You're absolutely right, Raghunathan. I think we did talk about this, but use cases have their own advantages, as you could have seen through now. But it's a good investment. The wholesome use case document model works well for a BFSI, insurance project, etc., or a product company, but not for a small, mid-sized company. I wouldn't really, think of associating a use case with the size of the company. It depends on the functionality that we are taking up. We can use use case for, small functionalities, right? It doesn't harm us in writing use cases for small functionalities, because it's about capturing details in a different format. But this format is going to help us not missing out any requirements. That's all about it, right? Otherwise, we are anyway supposed to capture all the details, be it in a text or any other format. But we tend to, miss that point when we capture it in the text format. That's why, we see use case coming handy. It helps you think through the granular details of the requirement. So I wouldn't really relate to, size of the requirement or even size of the company or domain involved here. It can be used, in any situation. That's my opinion. Let's see if there are any other questions. If any of other participants have any questions, please go ahead and type it here. Probably wait for a couple of minutes. Otherwise, I take it as we don't have any questions. Meanwhile, I hope the session was useful in a way to understand a bit about use cases and about how it can be used. Thank you, Kannan. Yeah, I can forward the PPT. I will share it with Kannan, and Kannan can share it with our members, chapter members. Sure, Sonal. Taking your point, I will be sharing it. Raghunathan has a question. How do requirements capture tools fare against good old Word document? Interesting question. Even though we have these tools in place, these tools help us to build traceability, build process while we capture requirements, or build more of a system approach to manage requirements. In my opinion, it's more to do with requirement management, right? When we say tools. Word document, yeah, it's how you typically capture the requirement. I would still recommend use case to be seen as a good alternate rather than using tools to simply capture requirements in few lines.